Hello.
Hello.
This
Good
is
to see
the,
you.
yeah, good to see you. This is the fourth, I think, of the interviews that we've been doing with different people from SFTS. And now we're here with the good Dr. Laurie Garrett-Cobbina. Um, Hello. Do you want to briefly introduce yourself?
My name is Laurie. I have been at SFTS since 2006. I came as the Shaw Chair for Clinical Pastoral Education, and I established the CP program at our school and run it still. Uh, and I also teach. I teach in all the degree programs. Um, including the doctoral program, if someone's interested in doctoral work. And so I've basically developed a program that didn't exist, and now it's really quite outstanding program in the world of CPE. And so one thing I have done, which sort of I'll pass along to you, is I've made my work happy for myself. I find ways to be happy in my work because there's a lot of things with work that you have to do, whether you like it or not, whether it's your favorite thing or your least favorite thing. So I try to build in things that I really enjoy. And so it's made my time, whether I was a pastor at a church or whether I was a hospital chaplain, a hospital director of a chaplaincy program, and now professor of pastoral care and education. I always find ways to make my work life enjoyable.
That sounds like such a wonderful idea to infuse into what you're building. Because then it would cascade down, and it would affect everyone who's sort of enjoying something you built, like in this case, the Shaw. What's the actual title? The Shaw Chaplaincy.
It's a Shaw Institute of Chaplaincy, the Shaw Chaplaincy Institute.
Thank you.
That's the name of it.
Yeah, I've heard only good things, basically. So I think, okay, yeah, that's awesome. So building that, like, how does that infuse like your daily work, bringing, like, doing things that you enjoy, bringing happiness into your work? How do you think that then affects the finished products, if anything is ever finished, but the thing as it is today?
Well, it really just makes my day and my energies uh, generate sort of more generative. Like I can give more out because of what I'm engaged in, and then I hope that it also meets the need of the institution. So, but what also happens is I take on more work. So I teach. There's a trauma certificate. There's also a chaplaincy concentration. So I wanted for there to be a chaplaincy concentration because I love chaplaincy, and so I teach more classes to have a concentration. I teach more classes because I created this trauma track. I love teaching it. So while it is more classes for me to teach, uh, and if people are interested in it, then it serves me and it serves the institution, and it also really I really enjoy engaging the subject. I feel like it's a way I can contribute to um, alleviating some suffering in the world, not myself, but through what students do in the world, which is pretty amazing. Um, so it sometimes generates more work for me, but it also generates more happiness for myself. And
Yeah.
the people I work with, I work with Paul and Marissa. When I ask them what kind of work will make you happy, what it does is it lets people use their strengths. And it's really great for retaining retaining people. So
Yeah, definitely.
so if I if I can help someone do what they enjoy doing, which why not? Why why can't I do that?
Mhm.
When I pastored at churches, I pastored a couple of churches. Um, Basically, I find ways to say yes. I felt like that was basically my work, is to find ways to say yes to people. I'd like to, maybe we should um, make t-shirts. Do you want to create a t-shirt? Let's try it. Let's do it. Maybe we should take the youth to this and that. Will you head up that project? Okay, let's go for it. Let's see if we can make that happen. So I try to find ways to say yes.
Yeah. And then right before this, you were talking about believing that all problems are solvable,
Yeah.
and being able to say yes to other people and their ideas. Oh, I want to, let's make a t-shirt. Yeah, I mean, it sounds sort of like somewhat, I mean, believing in people, but then especially believing in, if someone sees something they want to do, or they see a problem, then then you can respond with saying, well, that sounds like a solvable problem. I mean, that seems like definitely healthy leadership, but then yeah, a healthy outlook in general.
Yeah,
And
I
is
mean,
that, yeah, go ahead.
absolutely. It's like, well, we need to raise more money so we can do this or that or fix the roof. I have this ideal about t-shirts. Okay, let's try it. But yeah, my background before I went to seminary, I was in the sciences. I was a math major, and I worked as a systems analyst before I went to seminary. And so I spent a lot of my college years and my first job solving problems. So basically, that's what mathematicians do. They pose problems and solve problems, or see problems and look for ways to find solutions to problems. I'm much better at evaluating people, problems, and finding solutions than I am with equations. So I I have found that, and this ties back to me working with trauma and systems of oppression that cause trauma, like racism and sexism and ableism and classism and heterosexism, these things that actually intentionally work to traumatize people, because the traumatized people are less able to resist the oppression they're receiving. So you have to heal enough and be aware enough that this this external force that's terrorizing your life, you have to find a way to protect yourself from it. But if you're always traumatized, you don't get a chance to heal each time it happens. So you're continually working on healing so you can resist the trauma that's happening to you. When it happens in subtle ways, every day, like sexism and racism and classism and ableism and heterosexuality happen, sometimes you just have to ignore it. But there's still an injurious effect on it. Some people will say, no, it's not injuring me. But there's an injurious intent upon it. So I'm just saying that in a world that has structured oppression that hurts people, that those structures are we could change. We could solve the problem of racism. We could solve the problem of sexism, except for it's interconnected. Intersectional is the language that's used today. So solving these problems wouldn't solve one thing. It would solve a bunch of things. It would change a lot of things. And of course, people are resistant to changing, especially those who benefit from the structures. But I think it's all solvable. I think it's solvable by human beings. I mean, when we're suffering, sometimes we just have to call on God. But if human beings wanted to solve homelessness, solve hunger, solve the climate crisis, as much as it's solvable now as we damage the environment, we could do it. We could totally do it. We know we can do it. People have offered solutions to these things. So it makes me feel like I can still maintain some agency to make the world a more hospitable place, because I know that many of the things we face are solvable.
One of the things that's really beautiful in that is you don't seem like, you, Laurie, don't seem to have much fear or apprehension of big problems. Like you're sort of fearlessly bringing up, let's look racism, ableism, climate change, homelessness. Let's look these things square in the face and say, these are solvable problems. These are things that we can move towards advancing. And then, like you said, people do.
Mhm.
And I think I love, that's so cool that you were an undergraduate math major.
Yeah.
Because see, I think I know maybe for me and then some other people, I'm somewhat math oriented too. So I think I would be more inclined to say, oh, a math equation that's an easier problem, because things are, I guess it depends on what level of math you're at, but say maybe at the more basic level, things are discrete. You have clear, delineations of variables, and then here's how you solve it. Whereas human beings, and then these broader issues like we're talking about, they're so multifaceted. I'm not sure people try, but I'm not sure we could ever bring them down to discrete numbers, say, because they're always in flux and there's so much mystery. But you just said, I'm almost more comfortable. I feel like you said something like I feel more able to solve problems that people have.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you, where does that optimism come from? And then what does that skill in you look like, do you think?
I mean, that's a really interesting question. I mean, I find myself just reflecting on what you're asking, because when I was in studies, I think one of the similarities between solving a math problem and solving in engaging in the problem solving for human beings is they're both elegant. Some math is so elegant, but no one solves a problem the same way. When I had tests in college and I was given a problem and I solved it, there weren't a lot of math majors, so there might have been 8-10 people in the room, but we all solved it differently, because you get to the final answer differently, a different path. Everybody solved problems differently, and that was something that was so interesting about working with equations. And a lot of it is just your imagination. You have to use your imagination to pose the problem and then to solve the problem. I enjoy using my imagination, and I think I'm a little freer in using my imagination. And then plus the people you're engaging have imagination for solving their problems. I think it's easier for me to put together an understanding of steps we can take. When I solved a problem in college, it would be like 7 or 10 pages long. It would take a lot of paper to solve a problem. And so I'm used to these steps, these steps of getting to an answer, and it's not a quick process. So and for me, I mean, mathematical problems are they're pretty beautiful, but and also solving people problems is beautiful too. I mean, you would need math to solve homelessness. You just have to figure out about where to build and how to build and
Yeah,
what,
that's a great point. Yeah.
So I am better working with people than I was sort of. I don't know if did you ever go in the math build? Did you have a math building at your college?
Yeah.
And then we had a math library, and I used to be the proctor for. They had a self-paced calculus classes. So if you took the self-paced, you would study, and then when you wanted to test, you would go to the math library, and I'd be the proctor, and I'd give you the test.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So I was in the math library a lot because I worked for the math department, and people are in there just trying to solve problems, and
Yeah.
more problems got solved when 2 or 3 or 4 people got together to solve it, because they all had a different idea of how to solve it. Well, I think that's true of people problems too.
Yes. And imagination in that. And then this last thing, you're talking about collective imagination.
Yeah.
That is fascinating. And I like imagination itself is fascinating. And then, yeah, collective. I think so. I feel like I've been doing that more lately, is imagining a lot more than I have in the last 5-10 years. What is, I don't know. I'm inclined to ask, what is your imagination like? And what sort of, is there a practice there, or how would you describe it?
My imagination is pretty, it's it's pretty unleashed.
That's good. Creativity. Yeah.
Yeah, I do have some practices for my imagination. One thing is that if I'm in a context where it's appropriate, I say out loud things I'm thinking, which are sometimes just like so ridiculous,
Mm-hmm.
But I can do this. I have a group of friends. I have some people who are tolerant of my personality, who just sometimes I see things differently, and I have people who love me who are okay with that. So that's one thing. But also then I write, and even academic things I write, but I write some fiction too. But even academic things I write, I really use my imagination, because I when I started, to be a professor, you have to publish. One of the challenges in my area that I write in, pastoral care and in education and in trauma and grief, is finding a journal that will accept my articles. It's not one of the more it's not one of the areas that gets more publication. So I have to pose a thesis I have to pose a question in a way that I might get published.
Mhm, mhm.
And I have to pose it in a way that's still interesting to me. That is, if I had to put time into writing this, I want it to be interesting to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it takes a good amount of imagination for me to do that.
I think like the life of a seminary student is really similar like that, right? You sort of have a lot of papers to write, and then you're
Yeah.
given some constraints, and
Mhm.
then you're constantly trying to find, okay, what's the avenue that I have an interest in, so that the imagination can really flow there.
Yes.
That still matches with,
Yeah.
the needs of the class.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I remember I wrote a paper in seminary. It's for Dr. Migliori, who I think was Greg Love's advisor when he
Yeah.
was. Greg and I were at Princeton at the same time, although I didn't know him then. Um, and I wrote something for him and turned it in. He asked a question. He said, "This totally isn't what I meant by that question, but this is okay."
All
I mean,
right.
I just heard the question in a whole different way, and that's what I mean about my imagination. I heard the question in a whole different way, and I answered the question that I heard out of his question, but it wasn't the question he was actually asking.
Yeah.
But he couldn't mark me down for it because I just had a different understanding.